Hello everybody, this is Sanel and I'm very glad and excited that I can do my new tutorial today for tonebase. For today I have chosen to talk about Fernando Sor and his studies, which he was writing his whole life and which were actually very important part of my and in my musical development. Fernando Sor was born in 1778 in Barcelona, in Spain, and he was one of very first composers and guitarists who wrote music for classical guitar, which we actually know today. He was living by that time in some very important musical centers like Paris or London or Moscow, and he was considered by that time for the best guitarist in the world. Those studies that he wrote for classical guitar, he did actually in the beginning for himself, and they were a very important part as well of his daily practicing routine. Here I would like to say that in the beginning of his life, in the beginning when he was writing these studies, those studies were quite difficult and fast. If we take a look, for example, at Opus 6, we will see that those studies are actually meant to be played just for, let's say, professional guitarists. So he wrote them more or less for himself. And later he found out that those studies are too difficult even for his students and even for another professional guitarists from that time. So he decided to go one step back and to write some easier studies. And on the end of his life, when he was already old, when he was 50, 60 years old, he decided to write some very, very easy studies for the pupils, for his students, which we actually nowadays can use for our pupils, which can be used by some beginners, let's say. And here I would like to do small classification as well of those studies. Fernando Sor altogether wrote 121 study for classical guitar, which is quite a huge number if we compare this number with some later composers that were writing for classical guitar, like Heitor Villa-Lobos or Giulio Regondi, for instance. And those studies are actually written in 6 different opuses. My own classification is, as I said in the beginning, hard studies, middle hard studies, and easy studies. Into the hard studies belong Opus 6 and Opus 29. Later, the middle hard studies are the studies Opus 31 and Opus 35. And very easy studies or easy studies are Opus 44A and Opus 60. I think that those studies are very, very important in a musical development of one young classical guitar player because we have so many different things, so many different aspects while practicing those etudes, those studies. We have so many different technical problems, let's say, which we can develop by practicing those etudes. And in general, those etudes can help us to solve so many problems that we have in our repertoire, that we will have in some certain point of our musical way, let's say. So in those studies, we have actually polyphony, even in very easy studies, Opus 60, for example. We have very nice classical harmonical progress. We can practice, we can work on phrasing. We can work on one certain part of the etude. We can phrase actually on 2 or 3 or even 4 different ways. We can work on slurs. We can work on arpeggios. Each study is offering so many different things I would like to do small comparison here with the etudes by Leo Brouwer, which I really adore. And as Leo Brouwer said by himself, he always is searching for one, let's say, technical problem, one motive, one musical idea, and out of it he's creating one etude that is sometimes shorter than 1 minute, for instance. And Fernando Sor, in other way, he also is taking one technical problem or one musical idea, but he likes to do always to make some surprise, let's say, to put something something different in the middle of the study or in the end of the study, so that we have when we are practicing or when we are performing those etudes, that we have all the time to focus, to stay focused, and to keep our concentration. I think that they are not only meant to be practiced in our rooms, but also they are meant to be played in the concert halls. And here I would like to compare them actually with 28 preludes, which Frédéric Chopin wrote for piano. Those 28 preludes, for instance, are really great examples and great pieces that we have in classical music. And sometimes pianists don't play them all in the concerts. They choose maybe 3, 4, 5, or 6 preludes and play them together, and they work all the time, or almost all the time, very well together. And I think that the same principle we can and we should use with our instrument with those studies by Fernando Sor. So, for instance, I would suggest you to try maybe sometimes to make in your repertoire, to use in your repertoire 2, 3, maybe 4, 5 etudes by Fernando Sor, and they work actually, I tried it already, they work pretty well together if we mix those opuses. So, for instance, we can use one etude from opus 6, the difficult one, opus 6 number 6, or one of my very favorite etudes, opus 6 number 8. And then we can use one short etude, one easier etude from opus 44A, for instance, or opus 35, or even opus 60. And then for the end, we can use again some more difficult etude from opus 29. So I think that it worked pretty well in the concerts. I would like to make young people aware of how important really is to practice in general etudes, in general to work on technical exercises, because I know that we are all playing this wonderful instrument because of some beautiful pieces that were written by Francisco Tárrega, for example, or Agustín Barrios Mangore, or Leo Brouwer, Roland Dians, and so on. But if we are only working on our repertoire, if we are only working on the pieces, we can actually have easily some problems, some technical problems, if we just work on the music. That's why I would like to share with you my own way of my daily routine, which includes all the time, and still since years nowadays as well, I'm working almost every day, if I have time, on technical exercises. I spend there always nowadays between 20 and 30 minutes. I know it's quite boring, but here I can give you again one tip. You can do it probably with some friends, with another guitarist from your class, and it's much more fun if you sit just 2 or 3 or 4 persons together, and if you are working on some technical exercises. So the first thing, technical exercises. The second thing of my daily practicing routine are the studies. As I told you in the beginning, during my school, I had to play all 121 studies, and they are pretty much, I will say, They are pure gold in our guitar repertoire, and many of them actually are not so famous but are really great. Then, after let's say 1.5 hours of those things practicing, then I'm moving to my repertoire. My hands are warm, I feel ready, and I tell you that I really can play any piece I want because I feel really ready. I would like to compare those etudes with sonatas by Domenico Scarlatti because all of those 3 etudes are written in 2 parts. Each of those 2 parts have to be played 2 times. And what is very interesting is that each etude is beginning on tonica, the first part is ending on dominant, or if we start in the minor tonality, the first part is ending on a parallel tonality. And the second part is beginning or in a parallel tonality or on dominant if we play the etude, etude in a major key. And then again, as we are going to the end, we are finishing again on tonica.